It's beer o'clock on Real Ale Craft Beer. Today we've got a beer from London Beer Factory and it's a can of their Zia. It's a Tiramisu Pastry Stout coming in at 9.2% ABV. There's a look at the artwork on the can. It's a 440 milliliter can. 9.2% ABV. That's quite a big beer for Tesco. This is an exclusive beer for Tesco. You see a lot of the London Beer Factory beers in Tesco. You've got that big, full open top can design. I'll show you now. Have a little listen to the pop on this beer. The explosion, if you like. Have a listen. Always very loud on them openers, and if you have a look, you're taking the whole top off the can. So some of you might have seen my recent physics video where I was showing off putting the bottles in this little beer machine, which is pretty cool, I think. You could actually, with this can, you could put this can through the physics machine if you wanted to, because the pipe feeds in through the top. Pretty cool. Okay, so without further ado, this beer is available in Tesco'S for £3.50 a can as of the 14th of September. It's now the 17th of September filming this video. So we've had the beer 3 days. Look at that! Jet black beer in the glass. Oh my goodness me. I'm rather excited. Look at this. I'm going to pull no punches here. I'm going to pull no punches and say that I've had a lot of the London Beer Factory beer in Tesco. And to be fair, I've not really liked any of it so far. I've not really liked any of it. When this came out, when I seen this on the shelf on Monday, I just immediately as I seen it, I just had my fingers crossed, because I don't want to see a brewery producing bad beer after bad beer, keeping on tripping over themselves, producing bad beer. I don't want to see that. I want to see the brewery. They're a fairly new brewery as far as I'm concerned. I've been drinking this stuff for the last 2 years. But I just want to see the brewery do well. I mean this brewery no harm. But in the past, I can only review what I've had in my hand. I can only review that. And I have to be honest, because if I'm not honest, you guys won't tune in. And that's the whole point of the exercise, is honesty. So although I've slated the beers, and I've really given them a damn good slating, London Beer Factory, I wish them the best for the future, and I've got my fingers crossed that this is a really, really good beer. Let's see if we can get the rest of the beer in the glass. The quality so far looks terrific. Great conditioning on the beer. Looks like it's got a fantastic body on it. 1 to 2 finger tan coloured head. Good levels of carbonation rolling up the side of the glass. There you go. There's no light bleeding through this beer at all. It's jet black. And I've been picking up little waftings of the aroma as I've held this beer at a half arm distance. And I tell you, there's some pretty kind of big, bold, stouty kind of aromas coming through. So let's get the aroma then. And alas, fingers crossed, I think we have something special here. Finally, I think we have something really special from London Beer Factory. Roasted malt in abundance, chocolate, coffee, caramel aromas, and a big hit of hazelnut. It's either hazelnut or like a peanut extract, or it's wafer biscuits, creme brulee, hazelnut, peanuts, real nuttiness to the beer. This smells wonderful. Little bit of caramel. Let's dive in. Cheers, everybody. Available in Tesco'S, as I just mentioned, for £3.50 a can as of the 14th of September. We're taking a sip of it on the 17th of September. Let's dive in. Cheers. I just want another taste. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I am. Stone the Crows! Stone the Crows! Well done, London Beer Factory. Brilliant. Love it. Love it. Nuttiness, biscuitiness, wafer biscuits coming through. Chocolate, coffee, caramel from the roasted malt. It starts off a little bit sweet. That's why I went for the second taste. I was not overwhelmed, but there was quite a bit of sweetness in there for an Imperial Stout. And then it went from being sweet to lovely and bitter on the back end, and the roasted malt flavours coming through in abundance. The chocolate, the coffee, the caramel from the roasted malt. I imagine there's a ton of lactose in this beer. I've not looked at the back of the can. I imagine there's a ton of lactose and a ton of oats in the beer because it's really big, thick and rich. Really rich. The mouthfeel is incredible. It just kind of wraps around the inside of the mouth and just sits there for a while with a little bit of spike of carbonation just to remind you that it's a beer. It's not a, and this is me just being honest, but you know, you pick this beers up, it has said it's a tiramisu pastry stout. Now pastry stouts and tiramisu, they're meant to be sweet. So I'm going to be pragmatic in my evaluation of this beer. A typical traditional Imperial Stout would have been predominantly roasted malt. Not just roasted malt, but a lot of other malts. But the main flavours would have been tobacco smoke, chocolate, coffee, caramel, bitterness on the back end with a big creamy mouthfeel with a load of oats. But they've not produced that beer. And they've been honest enough to say, oh, they're not honest enough, but they've branded it that way, that it's a tiramisu pastry stout. So it's going to be sweet. It's going to be sweet. But it's not overly sweet. It's not overly sweet. It's manageable. It's a manageable sweetness. There's still some roasted malt on the back end. So you got your chocolate, your coffee and your caramel from your roasted malts. I've been to a maltings. Well, I was actually in Żywiec, the Żywiec brewery in Poland, where they had a malt roasting machine. And they would load this thing up with coal, and they would roast the malt. So they'd put a bag of pale malt onto this kind of small conveyor belt, and it would pass through this kind of intense heat, and it would roast the malt on the conveyor belt, and the pale malt, once it come to the other end of the conveyor belt, it was roasted malt, and that's how they typically get the colour of the beer. the flavour of the beer. And you get that in the beer, you get that mouthfeel, you get that kind of lovely creaminess, and you get that bitterness on the back end. And importantly, the flavours, as soon as you roast malt, you naturally get chocolate and coffee and caramel. Chocolate, coffee, caramel. We need a t-shirt that says that on the front. It's a little bit vinous as well. You get a little bit of a vinous quality that kind of passes through from start to finish. And that's the hops in the beer. So what that does, if you think of a pale, hoppy New England IPA, for argument's sake, the hops coming through there, because it's built on the pale malt, the real straw-coloured malts, you get more grapefruit and passion fruit and mango. But when you mix those same hops in with roasted malt, you get more kind of, it mixes with the darker malt, the roastedness of the malt, and you get more kind of plum, fig, prune. And that's the beauty of beer. That's why I love beer so much, is because you can go, I want to use a little bit of that over there, a little bit of roasted malt, I want to use these lovely Simcoe hops, and I mix it together, and I think you're going to get some kind of plummy and figgy and vinous qualities in the beer. I want to use a little bit of lactose, or I want to use some oats to thicken it up, get some mouthfeel in there. Yeah, it's why I love beer. It's why I love beer. So let's have a read on the back of the can what the London Beer Factory say about the beer. Progressive and independent beer, crafted in southeast London. Zia, a decadent stout modelled after the famed Italian dessert. Luscious mocha coffee aromas rise straight from the glass, drinking a velvety creamy body, is supported by rich roasted barley, backed by adjunct sweetness and roasty chocolate malts. A digestivo, dessert and coffee in one. So the malt is Golden Promise, Dark Crystal, oats, chocolate and roasted barley. The additions, no tiramisus were hurt in the making of this beer, and the yeast is Vermont yeast. So they've said backed by an adjunct sweetness. So they have added, now an adjunct, if you're new to beer, an adjunct is an addition. It's not malt, it's not hops, it's not yeast, it's not water. They're your four core ingredients in a beer. Hops to flavour, malts to flavour. In some occasions, yeast to flavour. And of course, you need water, yeah? When you want to add like your tiramisu flavour, your chocolate flavour, then you will typically add either cacao or some kind of chocolate concentrate or hazelnut concentrate. If I'm honest, if I'm to take a wild stab at it, it's some kind of hazelnut stroke peanut stroke chocolate adjunct that's been added to the beer. But I'm going to rate it. London Beer Factory Zia Tiramisu Pastry Stout, 9.2% ABV. One more thing before I rate it. The alcohol is really well hidden. Really well hidden in this beer. I like that enough. I like that enough to give it... I'm going to go with... It was a low Stone the Crows, but it was a Stone the Crows. A Stone the Crows, 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 from Real Ale Craft Beer. Please put your comments in the comments box. Subscribe to our daily beer and food reviews. Give us a big fat thumbs up. Boom! Cheers.